Matthew Moore's Wood Studios. Today is Tuesday, June 7th, which means it's time for another weekly shop update. So what's been going on in the shop this week? Well, this week is pretty much concentrated around the bottoms and edges of the tabletop. Now, let me walk you through what I've been working on. To start this part of the project off, the first thing I want to do was clean up the edges of my slabs. Now, some parts of the slab still had some bark. With the bark removed, I then turned to some spoke shaves and block planes and card scrapers to help me remove material from the sides so those edges could continue to flow the same way they did originally when they were part of an entire tree. So I wanted to keep that same natural curve along the entire length. And that's what's really nice about using hand tools here, is that you can feel where things are going. You know where you're going to make a turn or a curve or something like that. You can feel the edge of the piece and you know how to cut, and it's not as easy to remove too much material in one spot as if you were removing this with a power tool. Now, I can't expect everybody to build this to have the same set of hand tools as I do, or you may not even want to do this with hand tools. So I also recorded another way of doing this using a 4.5 inch angle grinder and a sanding disc. In that instance, what you want to do is just be, I guess, gentle. You want to just barely use the sanding disc to touch the material. That way you're not going in, digging in too much and removing or changing, that is, the shape of the edges, because at least I'm trying to keep that original shape as much as possible. So what's nice about the 4.5 inch angle grinder is it does this job in about 1/100th of the amount of time that it takes to do it with hand tools. You do have to do a little bit more cleanup when you're sanding though, but nonetheless, I don't know if it balances out or not. One is just more romantic and the other is very noisy. Now you'll see right here I have a picture I posted on Instagram of a new sander I bought. So I bought this rigid 6 inch random orbital sander. And the reason I bought a 6 inch, I have 5s, I have a couple of them, but this is going to cover so much more material so much faster. And with roughly 44 square feet of a tabletop to both the bottom and the top sides combined for these two guys to sand, I'm sorry, I just didn't feel like using a 5 inch random orbital sander. I want to step up to something else. So I put together my new 6 inch random orbital sander from Rigid with a shop vac that I had. Between those two guys, I had my dust collection and the 6 inch helping me to sand this. Now I started with a 60 grit piece of paper, so I moved that from 60 grit all the way up through the grits to 220. Now, one of the things that really interested me for this sander was it had two settings as far as the types of random orbits. One was a much more aggressive and the other was a much finer. So I think a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch total travel distance. And so I started actually with the 1/4 inch at the 60 grit and got this thing cleaned up of all the ridges. That actually didn't take that long. From the 60 grit, I moved up to 100, from 100 to 150, and then finally to 220. Now I didn't have any 220 paper for the 6 inch. They were out of the 220 paper when I bought it. So I ended up actually using my 5 inch random orbital sander for that. But that went really fast. Most of the work was done with the 6 inch. Now, when I was done with the 6 inch, I ended up turning to the 5 inch, which was a plan all along, and sand these edges of the slab. Now, I moved up from 80 to 100 to 150 to 220 here. The big difference here is that I use this 1/2-inch foam pad. So this 1/2-inch foam pad, as you guys can see here, is by a company called Mirka. It allows you to get into these curves here and not change the shape of the edges. Now I use this for other things as well. Now, for instance, seats, when I'm carving them and then sanding them, I use this guy to be able to go all the way up the curves and the edges of the seat. There's also flat edges here as well. So where the two slabs are going to come together from last week when I made the cuts to remove the material so I can bring these 1/8 of an inch apart down most of the length, that area was hand sanded. I didn't want to bring a sander up to that for being afraid of actually rounding something over, so I did all that with a sanding block instead. So my question of the week to you guys for this week is this: how would you have approached these edges here on the tabletop? I'm really curious. Let me know. Put that in the comments below. So as always, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and hit that thumbs up button if you like this video. If you're watching this on Facebook, hit the like button, share your timeline, and head over to the MM Wood Studio page and like us there as well. And as always, have a great week in the shop.